Hello, my dearest friends. Please be sure to check your inbox today for today's email. It contains a lot of really important information that we hope you'll be able to use for Shabbos, and a lot of great announcements for things that are happening all of next week, including as early as tomorrow night when we make a musical Havdalah at the Karapkin home, and I hope you'll be able to join us via the Zoom link up. There's an old joke about a rabbi, a cantor, and the president of the shul who get captured by terrorists, and the terrorists are about to shoot them all, and they say, "Do you have any last requests?" You've heard this joke before. The rabbi says, "I've got this amazing sermon that I haven't had a chance to give yet. Can I give it?" And they say, "Fine. How long is it?" He says, "It's only 45 minutes. They say, "All right, fine." They say to the cantor, "Do you have any final requests?" He says, "Well, there's this amazing melody that I have been planning for months to sing for Rosh Hashanah, and now I'm not going to be able to get a chance. Would you let me sing it?" They said, "Fine. How long does it take?" He said, "Only a half an hour." "Fine." So then they turn to the president and they say, "Do you have any last requests?" He said, "Yes, shoot me first." The point is that I need to give this drasha probably even more than you need to hear it. I've already sent it out in printed form, so if you'd like to, you can just print it out and you can ignore this video. But if you'd like to hear a few words of Torah, and I'm going to say it in abbreviated form, please stay on. The Mishkan is completed, and we've built this beautiful edifice, Moshe and the Jewish people, B'Tzalel, Oholiav, and the Torah concludes Sefer Shemos with a glorious cloud coming down from Shemayim and resting on the Mishkan. And the last paragraph of the book of Exodus says, Vayakhel Moshe lavo el ohel moed ki shachan alav he'anan uchvod Hashem aleyas hamishkan. Moshe was unable to come into the tent of meeting, to come into the Mishkan, because of this cloud that hovered over it, and the glory of God filled the Mishkan. Seems to be some kind of dispute, because the Ramban explains that we have many instances of Moshe entering into the Mishkan when the Shekhinah is present. We also know that when God descended his divine presence on top of Mount Sinai, the Torah says, "U'Moshe nigash el ha'arafel asher shama Elokim," that Moshe entered into the cloud, the thick cloud that was covering Mount Sinai that represented the presence of the Shekhinah. We know from Sefer Vayikra, says the Ramban, Vayikra el Moshe, that God called, beckoning to Moshe, "Come and enter into the Mishkan where the Shekhinah is present so that I can communicate with you." So why does the Torah over here say that Moshe was unable to enter just because the Shekhinah was there? Moshe enters into the place of the Shekhinah all the time. The Ramban concludes that the words Vayakhel Moshe do not mean that Moshe was incapable of entering, but rather he didn't yet have permission to enter, and he was waiting out of etiquette for God's permission to be granted to him so that he could enter and commune with the divine. That's how he understands the words Vayakhel Moshe. Moshe was unable because it simply was not the proper thing to do, to intrude upon God's domain without first being invited in. And that's a famous thing the Kotzker says, "Where is God? Anywhere you invite him in." But Moshe was waiting for God to invite him in before he would enter. But this seems to disagree with something that's written by the Targum Yonatan, the Aramaic translation of the pasuk, because Targum Yonasan translates Vayakhel Moshe as V'lo hava efshar leMoshe. It simply wasn't logistically possible for Moshe to enter in because of the cloud that had infused the Mishkan. And so it seems to be, at first glance, it seems to be a machloket between the Ramban and Targum Yonatan. Was Moshe able to enter but was simply waiting for permission to be invited in? Or was it physically or logistically impossible for him to enter because the Shekhinah was blocking him like a force field that was impossible to penetrate? That's what it would seem at first glance. Yes, there's a machloket. But I would suggest that there's really no machloket. Because I want you to consider for a moment that the cloud was covering the Mishkan for as long as the Jewish people were encamped in the desert. The Torah tells us that the only time that the cloud lifted up was when it was time to travel. This cloud was a symbol to the Jewish people that God's Shekhinah was present. But the Shekhinah itself was not in the cloud. The cloud was only a representation to the rest of Klal Yisrael. But if a regular Jew, were to walk into the Mishkan, could he see the Shekhinah? No. It was invisible. But for Moshe Rabbeinu, we suggest that because of his high and lofty, holy level, when he walked into the Mishkan, the Shekhinah was something that was palpable and visible and real, that he could actually see. For everyone else, the Shekhinah was invisible. But for Moshe Rabbeinu, according to his level, he had the ability to actually see and feel the Shekhinah all around him. So, on the one hand, from Moshe's perspective, he wasn't capable of entering, like Targum Yonatan says. Because when he sees the Shekhinah, he says, how can I possibly enter where God is? It's impossible. So his personal feeling was that it was impossible, like Targum Yonatan says, to enter. But from the perspective of the people who were the onlookers, and they see an empty Mishkan with a cloud cover over the Mishkan, they don't see why Moshe cannot enter. They simply perceive that Moshe doesn't yet have permission to enter, and that's why he hasn't walked in yet. Because they couldn't see the Shekhinah. For them, the Shekhinah was invisible. And I think this explains a passage in the Gemara in Masechet Yoma, page 4b, Dalet Amud Bet. The Gemara says that how could it be? It raises the contradiction that we mentioned. Atop Mount Sinai, the Torah says that Moshe entered into the cloud very easily to commune with the divine presence. Why over here, at the end of our Parsha, does it say that Moshe wasn't capable of entering in? And so the Gemara answers, this teaches us that on Mount Sinai, God, so to speak, grabbed Moshe and pulled him into the cloud. And what I think that's telling us is that Moshe perceived it as impossible. How can man commune with the divine? God says, no, there's nothing blocking you, I'm pulling you in. And that's what it means. Now, sometimes, I think this is the message, just because we can't see barriers doesn't mean that they're not there. And consider this latest virus that we're all cooped up in our homes because of. The medical community tells us that the virus is all around us. We have to be careful about the surfaces that we touch. And we have to be careful not to touch our face so that the germs and the virus do not enter into the orifices in our face. Now, we can't see the virus. The virus is invisible. But if someone had corona vision, right, I just made up that term. If someone had corona vision, you'd be able to see the virus all around us, and you would know exactly how to avoid it, and it would seem to you like there's this physical barrier. The point is, and this is probably one of the biggest lessons that we can maybe draw from what we're going through right now, is that what we can learn from this whole phenomenon is that just because your eyes don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. Just because we can't see Hashem or his agents doesn't mean they're not there. The Shekhinah is coming down to all of us this Shabbos, my friends, and is going to be spending precious time with us. Just because we can't see him doesn't mean that Hashem is not there. And I think this message is also perhaps why we read Parshat HaChodesh, where God presents the Jewish people with the mitzvah of Rosh Chodesh, the new moon. It's fashioned after this very same idea. When did God present this mitzvah of Rosh Chodesh to the Jewish people? He presented it to them when the moon was just a sliver on Rosh Chodesh, barely visible. Now, of course, we all know, just because you only see a tiny little crescent of the moon, it doesn't mean that's what the moon actually is. The moon is a huge ball. We all know that. Sometimes it waxes, sometimes it wanes, but it always remains the same size, even though to our eyes, it seems to be changing in size all the time. I think the message is that Hashem is telling us, look, the world will always be changing. You are my chosen people, and I fashion you after the moon. You'll always be changing, Bnei Yisrael. Sometimes you'll be up, sometimes you'll be down, so get used to it. But one thing is constant. You will always be the moon to my stars, says Hashem. And you will never innately change from the great people that you were born to be. Your greatness may not always be manifest, just like the fullness of the moon in all of its glory will not be manifest, but I know that it's there, on the dark side of the moon. When Hashem told us, HaChodesh hazeh lachem, this new moon is for you, he told it to us when the moon was just barely visible. And the lesson is, you can't see more than a sliver, but you know it's much bigger than that. We can choose to see what we want to see. We can choose to see the small people, even among our brethren who are perhaps misbehaving. Or we can choose to see the greatness within our people who are lining up to help each other and to help society in both large and small ways as we try to get past this terrible plague. Our goal should be to put on the right spectacles to make the invisible visible. We can find the Shekhinah all around us as we light those Shabbos candles and we recite Kabbalat Shabbat tonight. We can find that Shekhinah if we're wearing the right glasses. We can find greatness all around us. We can really look at the beauty and the greatness within the people sitting around our Shabbos table tonight if we're wearing the right glasses. And we can find the goodness within our current plight, despite the discomforts and the inconveniences, if we wear the right glasses. I wish you a beautiful Shabbos with your family and with yourself. Enjoy Hashem's world. Enjoy the creation and the people that God gave to you. Enjoy your home. Enjoy every single moment of your precious, precious life. May our efforts to see clearly allow us to visualize the redemption speedily. B'mheira b'yameinu. Amen. Good Shabbos, everyone.